Hey, welcome back to Jaws on Sports. Happy New Year for all of our listeners out there, and hope you had a great holiday season. Merry Christmas and all that. We are back and ready to go. I upped my production value. I bought this fancy, well, actually not fancy, little video camera that makes it look like I got makeup on, and I don't have any freaking makeup on. I think I did 1 year for Halloween one time, but that was it. So there is a learning curve with this nice Logitech camera, but uh, we're making it better. So anyway, we got a lot to get into tonight with college football games from this past weekend. How's it going out there, Zach?
Doing all right.
Very nice. Let's see the Springboro in the background. I'm repping Springboro Panthers here today. That's right.
Yep.
Good stuff. Okay. All right. So I want to say one thing before we go into the playoff games. The New Year's Six bowl games, which the Fiesta Bowl and Peach Bowl and all that, it was pretty bad. The state of college football is kind of scary outside of the playoffs right now. Now you had uh, a shell of the team of Florida State getting throttled by Georgia. You had the Ohio State Buckeyes score exactly 3 points, which is, hey, I got to admit, it's kind of funny. Against Missouri of all teams. Missouri probably didn't have a guy that Ohio State would even recruit. Uh, some other games, Tennessee throttled Iowa. Just outside of the playoff, with all these guys opting out, transfer portal, all this stuff, it's quite the mess. And just for me, college bowl games go back when I was a kid. Starting about the 20th or 21st of December, every night you'd have a good game to watch. Something to look forward to. And now it just kind of sucks. What are your thoughts on that, Zach?
I like ball games. You can end the season on a high note. Um, I don't like the opt outs though. I mean, this team, you grew with these guys. Your coaches developed you, and you give up on them for the last game. I think that's crazy. Um, but the only game that we should talk about is the Georgia game because you saw. I mean, Georgia had opt outs, but they wanted to be there. You could tell. Florida State could have went out there and proved why they should have been in the Final Four,
Hmm.
and Georgia did. They said, you know what, we might not be there. We're mad about it. We're going to do something about it. Florida State said, we're mad about it. We're going to blow off this game. And you get embarrassed like that. I don't care. Georgia had a lot of their backups in too. So did Florida State. So pretty similar, experience level, but they showed up to play. And I don't care how good you are, you don't lose by 60 points if you think you should be in the top four. Doesn't matter if every player opted out. That was a starter. It doesn't matter. That's embarrassing.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. And I mean, neither one of us are Florida State fans. And honestly, I think the committee got it right. I mean, Florida
I
State
agree.
hadn't played well. They're on their third string quarterback. They would have got annihilated by any of the other teams that actually made the playoffs.
Mhm.
And in my unqualified opinion, Georgia, even though they did lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game, Georgia's the best team, and they would probably be favored by at least a touchdown over Washington or Michigan. But that's another story for another time.
Yeah.
Um, I read someplace on ESPN the other day that there were almost 1,500 kids who were in the transfer portal, and that number will increase once the bowl season is over completely. Um, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of like, was it 2% of Division I players actually get to play in the NFL, make a team and play. So 2% of that 1,400, that's a minuscule number of guys who are never going to make a living playing professional football. And they're taking a chance going someplace else like this. Um, I don't understand it. I don't think anybody understands it. It's a horrible thing for the sport. because college football is pretty much the best regular season thing that there is in the sports world. And the regular season's still awesome, but you get to the bowl games, which we all used to look forward to, and for the most part, they sucked. And again, we'll talk about the playoffs here in a minute, but
Yeah, I just think I always liked it growing up because it was a different team. You play, you know, OU fan growing up. You play Baylor, play Iowa State, play Oklahoma State. You play these teams that you cycle through every year. You get to a bowl game, you're playing against some team that you'd never schedule or imagine to play. And it's supposed to be a big game. You can measure yourself, you can bring home a trophy. Um, just a great way to end the season. But these kids just don't care. And you can tell a team like Georgia, they are out there to be a champion.
mhm.
They are Orange Ball champions. Orange Ball, I think. Was it
Yeah,
the Orange
yeah,
Ball? Yeah. So that's a big deal to them. It's not, tough loss to Alabama, but they're still champions at the end of the season. They went out there and proved it. They beat a top 5 team. Um, and yeah, I I don't understand. I look forward to it. I like seeing different logos next to each other that you typically wouldn't. But they just don't seem to care anymore. It used to be a big deal who's playing in the Fiesta Bowl and the Cotton Bowl and all that. But now it's like, oh, I'm going to turn on the game and you're going to recognize 6, 7 players out
yeah.
there.
I turned on very few of the non-playoff games this year, and there were some I didn't turn to at all. Yeah, obviously the Oklahoma Arizona game, watched most of that. But it's kind of disheartening. And I don't have a horse in this race, and I don't profit or anything off of college football. Hey, if anybody out there does profit off of college football, hey, maybe we should talk. All right. Yeah, Joel's on sports as your forum. We can talk about that. But if I was running the show, there's one thing the NCAA can do. Okay. They can change the transfer portal options. They can make it to where if you transfer, you have to sit out a year like they used to do. NCAA can do that. They can't do anything about the NIL. NIL is a whole other thing. And there's some of these guys, freaking Arch Manning's pulling in like $3 million a year. He's never taken a snap, or maybe he's taken one, Texas. Um, but the transfer portal rules, hopefully something will happen with that. I'm not going to count on it, but it
There's got
just,
to be regulation with that.
yeah,
There has because you can't just be jumping school to school. Grad transfer is fine, but you can't be able to. If a guy isn't in the portal, you should not be able to contact them. You shouldn't.
exactly. Yeah.
It's a mess. But the bowl game thing, in the calendar for these guys, it says you got to transfer before potentially your bowl game um, to secure a spot with another team. So it's a mess. Um, will they fix it? I think they will. I think it might take them 5 years or so, but they're gonna figure something out because where they're going right now, um, it's not good. But the good thing is we're gonna have playoffs for a whole month next year. It's
Mhm.
not gonna be week, from the game on Monday till next Monday. It's a week
Yeah. Yeah.
playoff. Next year it'll be the campus games that start on January 20th, national title game on December 20th. The national title game is January 20th. So a whole month of meaningful football, which will be nice.
Yeah. If nothing else, it's going to be cool to see these different matchups. And honestly, if you're in the top 12, you got a shot. That's all you can ask for. If you're number
One thing,
13, too bad,
well,
but
that's the thing, because we're going to have number 13, but we're going to see a team like SMU or, uh, not UCF, but a group of 5 team that will
mm,
get that at large bid
yeah.
and just be a total waste of a spot. I mean, we saw Oregon and Liberty. We saw
Mhm.
SMU, who was the second best group of 5 team. They lost to 6-6 Boston College.
Yeah. I
I mean,
meant to say something about Oregon Liberty, but I didn't waste my breath on that. So,
well,
and
it's just
Oregon, hey, Oregon didn't have hardly any opt outs. And even a high draft pick, first rounder like Bo Nix, who had absolutely nothing to play for. He was out there.
Well, he played for his team.
Yeah.
That's why
And
I
I,
appreciate
I
a team.
respect that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
appreciate a team like Georgia that isn't about the individual, that is out there to win. Like even
Hmm.
Alabama last year, you know, Bryce Young, Will Anderson, they played in the Sugar Bowl. Those
Yeah,
guys
there.
are there for the team.
Yeah, there's something I want to. One other thing I want to mention, and then we can go into the playoff games. Um, the standard in college football for a long while has been Alabama, and in recent years it's been Georgia. Yeah, and those two teams, they're in the thick of it every year, and make no mistake about it, they'll be in the thick of it next year as well. Alabama, by their standards, didn't even have a good team this year, or good, they didn't play all that well. But oh, what was that? That was weird. But they they still almost made the championship game. And Georgia, with plenty of backups playing, still came out there and won by 60 points. You know, Alabama won their bowl game last year. And I'm telling you right now, even if those two teams had a lot of opt-outs, they still would have found a way to win or be competitive against an elite program. So if that's who you're trying to beat, that's what you got to do. You know, you got to build that culture to where, hey, look, we didn't make the playoff, but we made the Orange Bowl or the
Yeah.
freaking Pop Tarts Bowl, which is achieved a whole other level of gangsterness this year. Um, we're going to go out there with our guys and play. Okay.
Yeah, I
So,
just think it's like you said, it's a culture thing. And as a kid in high school, I wouldn't want to go play for Florida State because you have just been shown that you have guys that are going to quit on you
hmm,
and they're not going to show up. I don't get, you can be as mad at the world as you want to be, but the situation you're dealt, that's what you got to do. You got to get through it. You got to play. And your team went out there and didn't want to be there on national stage, lost by 60 points, and Alabama lost in overtime. And they have
hmm.
the audacity to say we should have been in the playoff.
Yeah,
And
screw them. They suck. Florida State. Screw them.
as a kid in high school, I would not want to play for them. Like, oh, these guys just totally gave up on their coach, on their fans, on their team, their teammates. That was terrible.
Yeah.
That was a disgrace of football. Um,
Well, I tell you
and
what, let's go from the disgrace of Florida State to the two amazing playoff games that we had the other night. My one criticism up front is that I'm still freaking tired from staying up until 1:10 Eastern Standard Time Tuesday morning watching Washington and Texas play. I don't understand these incredibly late start times. The national championship game on Monday next week is 7:30 Eastern, so that's much better. But why don't you take it first, whichever game you want to talk about, Zach, and we'll just go.
well, the Washington game was interesting because they played defense. Texas is a team that gets in rhythm really well, and they got them out of that rhythm early in the whole game. Texas likes to get those short completions, kind of dink and dunk down the field, and Washington wasn't biting on the deep routes and coming back. Um, they played really well. They did try to throw the game away. They had many chances to go up by 3 scores. Um, got some great turnovers, and for whatever reason, they took the ball out of their Heisman candidates' hands
Mhm.
at that time. If on those drives, they were up 34-21, I think,
Yeah,
and
the ball.
they could have won that game 56-28 or something like that if they just kept throwing the ball because Texas secondary, they could not stop them at all.
Hmm.
Uh, like at all. If they would have thrown the ball, they had what 90 plays around there. They'd thrown it 65 times. They might have won that game by 40 points. But Texas had no business being in that game late. Washington had some bad clock management.
I
Kind of
tell
let them
you
hang out.
that injury for the running back Johnson there at the end, that almost turned into the just something absolutely horrible on a technicality because
Yeah.
that they could have run the clock down. They would have had to punt the ball, but they could have run the clock down to probably
15.
about 15 seconds before they punted, then however much time. Texas would have had time for one play, probably inside their own 20-yard line. As it
Mm,
turned out, respect to Texas, neither one of us are Horns fans. Okay. Horns down, and Zach's got his beat Texas hat up there in the corner. But they they kept coming. Um, they took advantage of the mistakes that the Huskies had, and they had all kinds of shots to win that thing there at the very end. And um, I thought for sure they were going to win. I thought that late in the fourth quarter, the Huskies defense would wear down. They were still out there balling, and their defensive backs did the job there at the end. But
yeah.
I tell you something, Michael Penix Jr., he put up 420 yards passing, 10-point balls down the field. He's got that weird release. The dude's a lefty, and maybe that's just what I'm seeing. But the ball comes out so freaking fast, and he's on point all the time. Then he's
Yeah.
got three NFL wide receivers out there he's throwing the ball to
Yeah.
that just do a hell of a job. And
Polk, McMillan, and Adunze.
yeah, yeah. Uh,
This team, I'm not saying it's LSU, but you got to think of the receivers. It's kind of reminiscent of that.
yeah, they get some LSU vibes. They don't that, and we're talking about the 2019 Joe Burrow, Patrick Queen, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. The list goes on. LSU team. Um, they don't dominate like LSU did. I mean, Washington's. I saw something yesterday. They've won 10 games this year by 10 points or less. And what does that tell you? Oh, they don't dominate, but they freaking win. That's what they
Well, they
do.
find a way, and you're
Yeah.
going to have a tough
And
game today,
go
but
back,
they're going to find
yeah,
a
go
way.
back last season. They are, I think, 26-1 since the start of last season. So all they do is win games, and including beating a Oregon team, I think 3 times that we thought was the best team in the country on more than one occasion this year. So Washington just I didn't pick them to beat Texas. I thought Texas would pull away in the fourth quarter, probably win by 10 or 15 points or so. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
Um, just the Huskies manned up against them. And oftentimes, one thing ESPN did, they showed Texas a giant defensive tackle, the bulldozer sized, what's his name? His last name's Sweat. I can't think of his first name. But he was on the sidelines more often than not, gasping for breath because the Huskies, they were throwing the ball a lot, but they controlled the tempo. And
Hmm.
I love that, man. It's like they're playing hurry up, but when they're snapping the ball, there's 8 seconds left on the play clock. And they shortened that game. They kept the Horns players out there. It was absolutely brilliant game plan until some of the mistakes they did at the end, where if they would have lost the game, the fans would be calling for the coach to be fired. But just a great game plan by the Washington Huskies. Respect to them. They definitely were in a fight out there, and Michigan was too. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I keep betting against the Huskies, and they keep winning. I've actually got a Huskies T-shirt in my closet. Maybe I should wear that next week. I don't know. But that game was fun to watch. It went right down to the wire. Almost had an all-time comeback slash coach meltdown, but they held on and won. Very impressive.
I'll say Texas was a joy to watch this year, though. Really impressive on offense, at least. Their secondary is terrible. But, I mean, just watching them operate, they're and it's impressive that Washington shut them down in their rhythm. Didn't let them get those routine plays, 19 completions in a row, nothing like that.
Hmm.
So, respect to them. That was they they should have won that game by a lot. Um, I think that's their only downfall on that team is they don't put the other team out of it when they
Yeah,
have the shot Yeah, and they just got to be aggressive. I think if you get up by 10 against Michigan in the third quarter, you're throwing the ball and you're not playing conservative. You're throwing it, letting your guys make plays, and you can put that game away. Um,
Yeah, I want to kind of piggyback on that real quick, going back to Georgia's win over Florida State. I guarantee you, within 5 minutes of kickoff time, Kirby Smart and Georgia's staff knew that they were going to just blast Florida State out of the water. They couldn't match up with them. Florida State had no heart out there at all, and they were done. But did Georgia back off? Hell no, no. They hit that gas pedal hard, man. And it wasn't until their very last drive where they still got like 40 yards on that drive where they didn't try to score. So you gotta, if you want to win that big trophy, of which there's only one every season, you gotta keep pushing until you just beat that opponent down so much they're tapping out there. And Washington wasn't able to do that against Texas, but they still won the game.
I'll come out here and say Texas was, I'd say they are back to some relevance for sure. But this was a very favorable matchup, and Michigan was as well.
Mm,
Texas was the best team, just top
agreed,
to bottom in their
100%.
roster.
Yeah.
They were the best, and they blew it bad. And quite frankly, they got dominated, and they got some lucky charms there at the end of the game. But they had the clearest path. They were just better. They could settle in early. They have a lot of senior guys on their team, experienced quarterback, and they just totally blew it. Best Texas team in almost 15 years, and they
Yeah.
lost OU. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Um, but a good year for them. But the scoreboard doesn't really indicate what that game was like. That was more of Washington trying to blow it. And if their coach did blow that, I don't care. 13-1, Pac-12 champs, you got to go after that. I mean,
Yeah.
you totally blow that at the end, but it didn't happen, so that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, there were timeout situations that there were questionable play calls. Um, just you can't do, that injury. I don't know what the rules are in college football. Like the guy got hurt. A couple offensive linemen could have picked him up and ran him off the field real quick. Substitution. I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah,
Uh, that might not have ever been done. I don't know. We've seen guys limp, crawl to the sidelines. Obviously, the running back Johnson, he was in a hell of a lot of pain. And hopefully the kid's okay. But there were a whole bunch of things that happened in order to give Texas a chance to win, and they were not able to get the job done. So the bottom line is, yeah, this was a really good Texas team. It was at minimum the best team they've had since Colt McCoy was there, and probably more likely since that what was that 04 Texas team with Vince Young, where they beat USC and won it all. Those chances don't come along very often. Next year it becomes much more complicated going to the SEC. Same thing for Oklahoma going to the SEC. Tougher teams out there, 12-team tournament um, to get to the finals. But hey, it's tough game, man. Tough game.
yeah. Well, um, congratulations to both teams, though. Um, excited to see Washington.
Respect to them, yeah.
With the Michigan game, you just get it out of the way. That play call and Saban not benching his center. He has
Yeah.
benched a 2-year starter at QB in the national title game at halftime for a center to drop the ball on the ground several times throughout a game, and he stayed in. That really had an impact on the game. Third down situations, uh, bad snap. You're in game 14 and you're rolling the ball back to your quarterback. Are you
Mm.
serious? Um, but that final play, if you actually go back and watch it, it's reminiscent of the Notre Dame Ohio State screen pass. If that was completed, it's over because they had they had a good matchup on the outside. They had two receivers blocking the corners, and they had a swing pattern, the running back, but the snap was so low that it just totally ruined the play.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I think that I've been reading about this, and Wolverine players were even quoted, some of their defensive players, to say we knew what they were going to do, and we don't exactly know what Bama was going to do. It sure looked to me like when a quarterback Jalen Milrow got the ball, he full speed ahead right into the middle of the line. There was nothing there whatsoever. Wolverines blew that play up. They were ready for it. Before that play happened, there was two timeouts, and then there was there an injury, I believe, before that too. I mean, there
there's
was
yeah,
yeah, there was a
stoppage.
lot of time,
Yeah.
uh, to come up with something, and both teams called timeouts, formation changes, play changes, and all that. But it just seemed like that particular play at that time, with one freaking second left, it had a very low probability of success.
Well, it wasn't the play though. If you watch the play,
So
it's a
you think that they were going to try
yes, it
something
was a
out
run
there?
pass option. That play will be replayed many times, but you see the running back to the left of Milrow just sprint out.
Yeah.
There's two receivers blocking. That's a run pass option. He's gonna run it uh, to the left, or he can dump it off to his running back
So that was
in the
supposed to be
pass.
like a bubble screen or maybe even a tunnel.
Yes, exactly. He was running a little swing route, and he was wide open. There was two guys on the outside. The Michigan linebacker that was covering him was up on the line because they were expecting a run, and he wouldn't have been able to catch him. If Bama can get
Yeah.
not even a full block, they just get a hand on the guy on the outside, it's touchdown. And we don't know what happens after that, but that was just terrible execution, and it was all messed up because the guy rolled the snap back. Then you're playing at Alabama, you're in a championship situation, and you can't complete a snap. That's ridiculous. But Michigan was up in that game. I was talking to you. I was saying we're going to look back and say Michigan is going to lose because they didn't slam the door.
Yeah.
They got great
Field
stops.
goals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they got great stops. They got that fumble at midfield and punted,
Mm.
and so many chances to go out there and finish the game off, and they didn't. And I was like, I don't think JJ McCarthy's gonna have some crazy 4-minute drill here at the end, and they did. But
I
Rose
didn't
Bowl's
see
the
that. It looked like after Bama got that last touchdown to go up, well, hell, this game's over. And here's what we were talking about before the game. I was thinking that it would probably be close, but something screwy would happen at the end to make it a 12, 13 point Bama win. Like Bama would get a lead, Michigan get the ball, they get desperate, McCarthy would throw a pick six or something that would be the final score. And I was totally convinced that was exactly what was going to happen, but it didn't.
yeah,
And you know, for 55 minutes of that game, Michigan was just as good as Alabama. Um, both sides of the line, running backs. The quarterback play kind of canceled each other out because I don't think McCarthy's all that good. And Jalen Milrow is an incredible freaking athlete. Oh my God. But he's not a good passing quarterback. He doesn't have the touch. He doesn't have. Um, he's definitely got the players to throw to, although they don't have Devontae Smith or Jamison Williams this year. But they got tons of playmakers. He just has to give them the ball, let them do their business. Um, but besides the quarterback position, just just lots of equal talent out there. And for that, I have to give respect to Michigan because it was just in 2000 where they were, they were 7-5 team, I believe. Now, some of my our Michigan viewers might think are full of crap, but they weren't that good, and Harbaugh was on his way out. And in a couple of years, they become an SEC defeating team, making the college football championship. So that's saying a lot.
I just think what they did well was they didn't, it sucked that they didn't punch it in when they had opportunities, but they
Mhm.
didn't beat themselves. They did
Yeah,
not turn the ball over, and that's why they won.
yeah,
That's how Bama's got you. That's how they beat Georgia. That fumble
yeah.
inside the
Inside
red,
the 10-yard line. Yeah,
and that was
yeah.
it.
But we got about 5 minutes left in our show tonight, so just kind of looking ahead next week. I remember after game one, after Michigan beat Alabama, I texted you, texted my brother also, and I said, that was a hell of a game. Michigan is beat up pretty good. It's going to be tough for them, whoever they play next week. And at the time, I thought for certain it's going to be Texas. Didn't happen. So Michigan was in a very physical game. Obviously, Washington was against a very physical Texas game. So it's going to be hard to imagine both those teams coming in real healthy with some key players out there. You do what you got to do, of course, but you got quite the contrast in styles, and not to mention two teams that will be Big Ten next year, and also they play each other in October. Um,
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to mention of the probable or of the potential playoff championship game uh, teams, I think that this was probably the least likely with
Oh yeah.
the.
Yeah.
And I know that I didn't pick either one of them to win, but yeah, I'm kind of glad that they did. This is the first season since 2014 that the SEC hasn't had a team in the national championship game. Which, hey, let's be honest, that's pretty cool. We need to see something different out there. So, Michigan or Washington, I've picked against Washington probably 5 times this year alone. They've won them all. Um, Michigan, even though they beat the hated Ohio State Buckeyes 3 straight years, I was still real skeptical of them. I didn't think that they had the moxie to beat Alabama. I didn't think they had the moxie to beat Texas. I thought they would have had a chance in the semifinals to beat Washington if they played, but they're going to get that chance on Monday night.
Well, I think with this game, it's just the contrast of styles. Michigan likes to pound it in the middle and run it. They don't have great quarterback play. They don't have great receivers. Really strong defense that constricts you. But I'm taking Washington. I think they're the destiny team. Um, they have the stud QB. They have the crazy receivers, and I don't think Michigan. They're gonna make great plays out there, but eventually Odunze or McMillan, one of those guys is going to make a play really deep, and then he's going to make another one, and then three or four more.
Yeah.
You can't stop Washington throwing the ball. You can't. So
Well, you
Michigan,
can. And one of the things is it's unbelievable how fast Penix gets the ball out. I mean, that's some. I know that. Um, yeah, when the time comes, we'll have an NFL draft show here in a few months. But I know that there's guys, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Bo Nix, and some others who were looked at before Michael Penix Jr. But this guy gets the ball out so freaking fast. Now, obviously, the offensive coordinator and the coaches, they game plan for that. They have their quick outlet receiver, but Texas didn't sack him at all. They barely hit him. They barely touched the guy.
well, that's going to
It's
be
pretty impressive.
the battle on Monday is Michigan's front seven against that O line because it's a very good O line, but you have these crazy receivers and you have a quarterback that makes good decisions and he makes
Mhm.
them fast. So their pass rush can be totally neutralized. They like to run those little now routes where you just stand there, throws it to you, and you run, and they get 7 yards doing
Yeah.
that stance. And then eventually they'll hit a fade downfield or a post. And man, I like Michigan. I think Michigan can trade blows with this Washington team because they run the ball. And I think that the front four for Washington's kind of weak. Um, So they can definitely bully them on the ground. But Michigan's chance here is they got to shorten the game and they're gonna have to have some silly plays again. They're gonna have to have a fumbled snap or like a tipped interception or something like that to win. But
I honestly think that Michigan's best chance to win this game is Washington's coach screwing up. I really do.
exactly, yeah,
Because
it's
that in the game against Texas, that wasn't one screw up. That was multiple screw ups that
really
added
bad.
up.
Yeah,
And um
if Ewers puts that ball on a line, that game's over
yeah.
instead of the lob. So I think you're right. I think Washington's way to lose is by beating Washington.
Yeah, I'm
That's
gonna go out on a limb here. I'm gonna predict that Washington beats Michigan for the national championship. I'm gonna go with a 34-24 score. They get a late field goal that makes the margin of victory a little bit more.
right. Yeah,
But that's what I'm gonna take. I'm taking the Huskies to win.
I could see Washington getting up by a score or two and having a chance to just totally just put them in the ground.
Mhm.
And they don't. They do something silly. They take it out of Penix's hands. As you said, with DeBoer, he makes some really weird decisions. I think they can beat themselves, and that's how Michigan's going to win if they do win.
Yeah,
But Michigan, you run the ball 57 times Monday. You pound it at them. You got a stud at Blake Corum, and
Edwards
um,
is really good too. They got two studs back.
yeah. So you just pound the rock. You're not going to be able to stop the receivers. You got to just try to contain them. So you get into third down, you got to make a play. Um, that game's going to be won on third down for both teams. Running the ball for Michigan, short passes for Washington. But I think it's going to come down to maybe a special teams touchdown. Michigan has shown punt return ability,
Mhm.
also the disability of muffing a punt, stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
So
And
um,
Michigan special teams were total crap in that
yeah,
game.
so it's in a game like this, you can't beat yourself. You have to go out there and you have to do what you got to do. Um, but I'm taking Washington too. I'm thinking their receivers are going to go crazy. McMillan, Polk, Dunze. I think he'll throw for 350 Penix and 37-20.
All right. We only got about 5 seconds left here. I want to thank Boylan Beer, Root Beer out of Cincinnati. Great stuff. I'm Mike. There's Zach. Jaws on Sports. We're out. Have a good night.